I don't know how many of you are actually familiar with the Appalachian Ohio, my railroad. Um, as Bob just mentioned, it was featured in the May 2006 Model Railroader. And I think that might be when it kind of became for some folks, the awareness of what I was building on the railroad. I'm fortunate to have many good helpers. Bob Sobel, one of my helpers, is a tremendous photographer, worked for HP, developing the color renderings of their cell phone cameras, for cell phone cameras in general, I should say. And so he takes fabulous pictures. This particular scene on ANO 1.0, as we call it, I don't know who may have seen this other than on the cover of the magazine, but this actually became a favorite of Tony Custer's way back in the day, and it wound up gracing the NMRA banner at conventions and open houses for smaller venues all across the country. And I don't know but what maybe it still is, but he had an affinity for Appalachian coal, if you recall, and so he wanted to feature this on their banner. So that also got it a lot of play. Ironically, it's for the NMRA banner, and I'm not even an NMRA member, so we'll just let it lay right there. In 2005, we found ourselves empty nesters. Our 4 kids had graduated from high school, gone off to college, getting married. My parents, who lived in a very nice carriage house above the garage we had built for them, needed special care, so they went to a retirement home. And my wife and I looked at each other and said, we got this enormous house for a family and parents, and it's just us rattling around. Why don't we find and build another house, or at least move somewhere else? And so we looked around and eventually found a spot about 7 miles west of where ANO 1.0 resided. And so we set about building a new house in 2006. Nothing like O-scale to make you want to have more space. So I was able to get a cement contractor who would work with me to put pre-stressed concrete T-beams for my garage floor. These are 10 feet wide and 40 feet long. Each of the T-legs has, right here, T-legs has 3 strands of cable, steel cable in them. So you can see there's a little bit of an arc there. When they place them and put the floor in place, they put them in the notches here. It flattens out when you put a little coating of cement on top, and you've got clear span, open space under the basement. When we studied it out, it looked like this. So here's whoops, go back here. Here's one of the T-legs right here, another one, and this one right here is the 4th one, and some ductwork for the rest of the house. This post right here actually is where the actual house begins. So I'm one of those persons that has a 2,300 square foot house and a 4,000 or 3,000 square foot basement. As you can see, it's all clear of obstructions, so it's awesome for railroading. So what did that gain me? I'll show you what, if you were standing in this area, looking up under these T-beams, or if you're right here, or if you're right here. First, if you're on the left, this is what you see today. There's a hump yard in here. There's a class rival departure yard up here. Staging's down here and here. So that's just 2 of the legs. Here's the middle section. This is called making use of inner space. It's kind of like a bonus room over a garage. It's an industrial switching area of Fillmore Heights. And here's on the left of that, to the right of that, here's Fillmore Heights over here, and here's a large paper mill. Runs all the way the full length. And this is from this wall to the wall behind me, which is about 5 feet behind me, is 40 feet. So you'll know you've arrived at my place because there's a A&O switch stand there, but this is a parking lot that I put out behind the house for all the operators and visitors to come. And so you'll turn around, and this is where you'll walk in when you come to visit. Go right through the patio door, 2 trains. When you come in, there's a crew lounge, small one, bathroom. There's a wall over here. And if you look at that wall, that's where we put in a small dispatcher's office. And that's what that office looks like today. I've been very fortunate to have many good helpers build the ANO. It's too big a project for myself. Bob Sobel, as I mentioned earlier, is the HP electrical engineer, and he designed the circuitry and so forth on our CTC panel. I built the cabinetry. Some other people worked on loading the electronic hardware, but there's Bob. You'll meet him when you're here. He's a great friend, and he's also the ANO sugar daddy. So he provides the finances for a lot of things we do here in the layout. He designed the circuit boards. Those circuit boards house all the alert lights and so on. If you've seen the back of many CTC panels, they're just a maze of wires. Look how clean that is. That's because he planned it and designed it to be very free of point-to-point wiring. This little unit right here is transducer. When you make a wrong move on the CTC machine, it'll speak to you. So the board actually speaks to you. And we have a variety of funny things. We have a bell down here. This is from an actual CTC machine that announces when the train is on sheet. The ANO runs from Ohio down into West Virginia. It actually continues on up to Columbus and over to Cincinnati on the west and down to Marion, South Carolina on the south. Interchanges here with the CNOs that would naturally, if this is the route, on my imaginary town of Ridge. And we've got New York Central and Baltimore, Ohio, which also run through that area. So they are represented on the layout. And the Norfolk and Western, likewise, crosses the ANO. And then we had a couple of other freelance. Here's New River and Western, Bob's New River and Western. And we have another one at Mount Union. Right here, I didn't show it, but it's the Antioch and Dover. We'll see that in a minute. Here's the way it looks in track plan. I don't know if any of you have seen this. This is a rendering. It's on the ANO website. It was done by Jose Oliveira out in New York City. He saw the track plan in the Model Railroad Planning 2009 edition that I sent to Tony. And he sends this back to me. He says, I saw your track plan and I wanted to give you a colorized rendition of that. So this showed up in my mailbox, and I couldn't believe it that he took time to do all this. But when you walk in the door here off the patio, first thing you see underneath is when you walk in is a bridge complex that spans the Ohio River. One of the persons who's been very instrumental and helpful in building the ANO 1.0 and now 2.0 is Vince Griesmer. This is a urethane castings that he makes himself. He makes the masters, the molds, and then casts the pieces for this large double track through truss bridge. It's modeled after a bridge crossing the Ohio River just below Pittsburgh. He says he's got about another third to go yet, but it's looking pretty good. This is a picture from early construction days. The substructure of this bridge, I wanted it to be solid all the way across. I didn't want it to be in pieces. So this is a 1.5 inch square aluminum tube, 2 of them side by side, and they're welded right here onto these legs, and then it bolted to the bases of the river. So this gives me a full, complete, solid stretch. And if you stand up underneath that, you would hurt your head. it wouldn't move. That's what I wanted. This area here is a deck truss, double track deck truss. This is the through truss, and this is a deck plate. So you've got a series of bridges that cross the Ohio River. Rick Bacon is another person who is very instrumental in building the railroad. Here's Rick working on Mount Union. This is his trackage here. I'll show you some pictures of Rick's work. He's a phenomenal modeler. We call him Sarge because he's recently retired from the military, Master Sergeant. All of the structures are scratch built, including like the little forklift here. He's got a chop shed. And they're lit, and they have interiors. That's his railroad, the Antioch and Dover. It appears this guy was scared a little bit because he's levitating. Show you the detail that Rick does. Here's the lever that throws the turnout points here in Mount Union. Rick just finished his engine not too long ago. But it's still under construction. I'm going to talk a little bit about the lighting that we did on the ANO 2.0. It is important to me to create a very, sorry about the noise in the background of kids. Hang on. Sorry, guys, we have a Mother's Day celebration going on, and I have 6 grandkids racing around here.
You know, in every one of these Zoom calls, there are assignments that are made. One of them is to have small children interrupt the program at least once. And the second one is, at some point, we need a barking dog. Obviously, David had the small children. And I assume that we are still going to get the barking dog at some point. If you've already made that commitment, you can raise your hands. Otherwise, we'll just do it impromptu. Thank you.
We don't have a dog. So we'll probably pass on the dog and just opt for those kids. One of the things I like to do is make sure the layout is well lit. So we have some cans. I'm going to show some ways in which we lit the railroad here. These are some can lights. We use those to shine across this aisle because it didn't work on that other aisle to put a valance. But here we have a valance, and we have some fluorescent bulbs up in there. And I use the grids to protect people's eyes from seeing the lights. There's another light. This is going, the Ohio River Bridge is just to my right out of sight. So that's how we lit that bridge top down. This is looking at Millport Yards here on the left, wraps around to the paper mill on the right. But we've got this complex of control panels. What's the purpose of them hanging over the layout? Well, if you're standing on this side or this side and you're looking, you're going to get the lights from this side. In this case, you're going to get the lights from can lamps. If you're standing on this side looking this direction, you're going to get these fluorescent lights that are behind this valance in your eyes when you come around. So I thought, well, that doesn't look good. How am I going to protect the viewer's eyes from those lights? So as I thought about it, I thought, well, where am I going to put my control panel? Well, maybe I can just do a box that hangs down. I can put the panels within it. And from one side, this is what you see. This is from the Millport side. So you've got a sky. There'll be some conveyor housing reaching over across with some supports across the rail into ostensibly another building on that side. If you're on the other side looking, here's the other view. Same thing, be a support with some piping going from this industry to something obviously that's in the aisle. I think I'll back up for a second just to give a little explanation. You'll notice we have 2 kinds of panels here. This is obviously a CTC type panel. And so it controls everything that interfaces with the dispatcher. So when trains are coming out of the staging yard or out of the Millport Yard, he will push this traffic lever to the right, meaning we want something to leave going to the right. It corresponds onto the dispatcher panel with this correspondence light after he codes the button, and a train is dispatched and leaves then Millport Yards and heads out onto the main line. Same way, if this light's blinking, the dispatcher has coded for traffic arriving into Millport. And these are switch levers for tracks that anything that comes out of this is called CM Tower. Anything that comes out of CM Tower is controlled by the dispatcher's panel. Down here we have a model railroad type panel, and it controls the switches that this area, this far, that are not interfaced with the dispatcher in any way. But we do have repeater signals on this one. These are backlit, as we'll maybe see in another photo, for night ops. Okay, here's another similar situation. If you're on this side, you're going to see these lights. If you're on this side, you're going to see these lights. And so this larger box hangs down. This is over the Morrison, West Virginia coal marshaling yards. So this provides a place for all this material to live, all the while blocking the view of lights in the operator's eyes. All of our control panels have lighting behind them or onto them in some fashion for night ops. This scene is for demonstrating the box up at the ceiling. I don't know if you can see it at the top. This is where a joint is. It connects to the ceiling. This box comes down and holds the grills for above the fluorescent tubes. There's your tubes you can see, and notice that they are skewed. They're not in line with the grids. If you put them in line with the grids, you're going to have lines on your layout. If you put them at an angle, not only do your eye not see them, but they don't cast shadows down on the layout. Here's the typical balance that we have along much of the layout. And we also have, there you are, 30,000 Kelvin, which are museum quality bulbs, fluorescents. Thanks again to Bob Sobel. And then we have some halogens spaced here and there along to create shadows. Notice that the hopper looks like the sunlight is off to our right. So rather than flat light, which fluorescent will give you, the spaced halogens throw some sunlight, some sense of direction on the layout. It's very subtle, but it does make a lot of a difference. Here's a recently completed scene in the Cateford coal branch that is, well, was intended to be kind of a dim lit. I wanted to have a look of early morning, just rained, misty kind of scene. You can see you've got mud puddles and things that are still drying out. To try to get that effect on the front end, I mounted the fluorescents in troughs, in tray troughs that I made, and hung them from the ceiling so the light went up and bounced down onto the layout. Well, that worked pretty well, but this scene is what it looked like just with the fluorescent bulbs all by themselves. I thought I needed to be a little bit dimmer in here. So what I did is I put some screen wire over the top of the bulbs to make some separation for heat and so on, ventilation. And then I cut some thin material. You can see how thin the material is here. Thin material, black strips, and I just randomly placed them across the top of the lights. They don't get hot, so there's not a problem because we got airflow. But this is now what it looks like more in real life. You get a much softer, darker look. That works pretty good. And then we have a night scene as well. You might notice that we have on the lights, this is a very white light here, and this is a very yellowish light. The white light is because we used a certain kind of LED that represents a fluorescent rendering, or in this case, even more, it represents a mercury vapor light. And this would be a tungsten bulb. So we planned out what would be at each location, and those provide the look. Here you can see I'll go back a couple here. Here's the mercury vapor bulbs. And Vince Griesmer, who is the whiz at all the urethane castings, we made a master, he made a mold, he cast them in urethane, they have the hole drilled out, and they look just like a mercury vapor light, complete with a little sensor on the top. And we have a way we make the wires disappear inside the telephone pole. These are just phony wires here. Okay, so we have loaders planned for the ANO that actually load coal. And so this would be one of those sites that we actually, in between sessions, load the hoppers with coal. And that eventuates sometimes this operation.
Yeah, we should have got one of the cars joined on the side.
Dave's gonna be like, what happened here? Nothing at all.
Just get a little bit of glue and glue it down.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that until I found the pile of coal. Another way we move coal is by these hoppers that are sort of Atlas fish belly hoppers. So I made several of these discharge trestles so that the car can be pushed over them, because the Atlas fish belly hoppers have a sprung gate that you can push open. So as part of the operation, and Bob Kelland has done this himself. Yes, Bob? Yep, Bob's done it. And you actually unload the hopper right there at the trestle before your switch job is done. This is a scene from ANO 1.0. This is the large King Coal Company at Cayford, West Virginia, on the branch. It's about 6 feet long, built from scratch, and it actually loads coal. Behind this wall was a large coal V reservoir, and the coal was automatically conveyed up into a hopper here, and then conveyed down on a hopper here, and being loaded into the hoppers. During an operating session, we would move by rail, load and move by rail, and empty out. We figure about 8 to 10 actual carloads of coal, or gallons of coal in an operating session. So when it leaves here, it usually requires helpers. So we'll give you a look at that. That trestle obviously needs some towers yet to be built. I'm going to build them out of brass, so I haven't gotten to that yet. On the other side of this wall, right behind these hoppers, is the Cayford coal branch. I didn't reference that. I meant to on the diagram of the layout. Tucked inside, is a very long, narrow coal branch, Cayford coal branch. It's 150 feet long. It wraps the length of the railroad, up and back, both sides. So when you go in there, you are isolated from the rest of the railroad. It's a railroad unto itself. It has its own dispatcher and telephones because of the length of it. It's apart from the regular dispatcher. But what happens then? We rotary them. So that is a model of the Whiting roadside dumper. I saw plans for that many years ago. I thought, I bet I could build something like that, no scale. So using some spare parts and styrene and plexiglass and brass and an old motor I found at a surplus shop, I built this thing. It's going to get a new motor here eventually, a quiet one, but it works very well and works just like the prototype. So let's see, give you one more view of that. This is Jeff Mcdonald, whose High Plains layout in Boulder is on the layout tour. He's a phenomenal modeler, and you'll enjoy seeing his layout as well.
Heavy railroaders.
I'm going to talk about track work on the A&O for a moment because I get a lot of comments on that. I hand lay all my track, have done so since I was in high school. So that's a skill that somebody taught me many years ago, and I really enjoy laying track. It's one of my favorite things to do. So as a result, I make the layout work by really the track work is what makes the layout work, because I fit a lot of track in a smaller space because of the way I build the turnouts. There's nary a straight turnout on the layout, I don't think, just because I tend to build it with the flow. Is it prototypical? Well, that's where I depart from the Proto 48 modelers, because I'd have to say some of that is not typical or not prototypical. But I'm okay with that because I'm all about the operation and the fellowship and the enjoyment of it, and not so much a stickler of, well, that shouldn't be looking like that. I've got turnouts that range from everything from about a number 6 to a number 14 on the layout, depending on the location. But on the left, here you can see, this is coming into the coal marshaling yards of Morrison. There's a large preparation plant that will be sitting over here. It may actually have a mock-up by the time you guys come here for the convention, sitting over these inbound tracks. Coal is emptied. All the hoppers at a dumper house, shaker house right behind us here, and be conveyed up into the big coal prep plant, and then it's reloaded into the hoppers, and then they're taken over to this storage yard and classified. I modeled 1968, so they were still classifying coal cars by individual car numbers. So one coal car is going one direction, another one's going another direction, and they actually have to be classified. So this is the coal classification tracks. It's kind of a fun job, but notice the three-way. The three-way gives this possibility of reaching these tracks without having to have a much longer space. To our right was Morrison, and in this is Ricksburg, West Virginia. We've got straight trackage here. We have a small yard because we have a number of merchandise turns that leave out of here. And so we have this small yard here. And coming around the other side, we've got the engine terminal. Well, that means that basically on right here, where it makes the big bend, that's where all the trackage has to come apart if I'm going to have any length on my switch, on my yard tracks. So what I did is built a lot of long three-ways, curved three-ways. This is leading into the engine facility. You see the three-ways there. This track I just added in here last month because we found we needed a place to hold coal power on that side of the main line. This is looking down on going into the yard tracks. So it's a typical spiral or pinwheel ladder. We've got three ways. Everything's butted up against everything else. What you can't see in this, particularly, so I'm going to give you a closer view, is if you'll notice this three-way coming out of here, we have two frogs on this three-way right across from each other. So train coming down and taking the middle route, the wheels don't know which way to go because you can't put a guardrail in there. So I made this a movable frog, so it throws in conjunction with the points back here. So there's a tortoise under the frog as well as the points, and they both throw. This frog will come this direction for travel on this track, goes that direction for travel up the middle track. Again, it's space saving, and you do what you have to do to make it work and fit, and it works very well. It's the yard throat. This is a view inside the Caford. We're almost done here. Inside the Caford branch, we've just knotted underneath out of the rain room in Linwood and Ridge. And I guess we have a little shay here that works the coal loaders. That large King coal plant that we saw earlier that loads coal, I had planned to sit right here at the lowest, at the far end of the Caford branch. This is the town of Brooks. And so it was going to sit here, and to be a large reservoir on the wall to load the coal. It was all set up fine. The problem was I put the clean coal in place, studied it, looked at it, and I didn't like the scene composition. I said it overwhelmed the scene. It was too large for this space. Coming into Brooks, we have 2 tracks that allow for a train to come in, run around the empties, push them in, and then grab the loads and take them out. So we got 2 tracks in, and we got 3 coal tracks plus the 4th one that serves a team track and another small industry right here in the town of Brooks. So how am I going to get 4 out of 2 and have this track be able to reach all of them? This is what it looks like. So here's the 2 tracks coming in, and first coal track, second, and the third, and then this track going up to the freight house and team track and so on. It's reached by this track only. However, in order to do that and still have this connect to that 3rd track to retrieve loaded hoppers, we wound up with a lap switch off the 3rd leg of the 3-way. And yes, it works. But it made for some rather fancy footwork. And is it totally prototypical? Well, I've seen some pretty amazing stuff on a prototype, but whatever, it works. So that's Craig Lynn. He plays dispatcher quite often. He's sitting there waiting his brain to kick in so he knows what the heck he's doing. You can see he's got trains on the board here, both of them on the double track coming up. And I don't know if it was this scene. No, it wasn't, because this is going to be, the next scene is going to be Junior here, dispatching.
Dispatch. Hey, that signal on the main is for the light power move to head back down.
Okay, we'll get him out of here.
Copy that. Dispatch out.
Well, that's right. Text the guy and whisper information.
Got it all set.
And there you go.